Welcome to this first ever commentary video. It's probably gonna feel like it, but I'm gonna try my best. Hopefully we'll improve over time. I'm starting off by laying down some base colors. This is all done on one layer. It's good to have your line art and select it as the selection source. And then when you're using your magic wand tool, have that also set as selection source or specified layer. That way you don't have to keep clicking your line art and clicking your base colors and going back and forth. I'll also include a link in the description where you can get this line art, and I'll include the color palette and everything too, and maybe the PSD of the entire file. So if you want to get that and try coloring it yourself, you can. So just continuing to put down all of the base colors, everything done on the same layer, which is good if you're a little new to digital art. Digital art for the first time can be really confusing with all the layers, but it is very helpful to have some things on its separate layer. I'm putting down a background color. The background for this is just a gradient. And then creating a new layer on top of the base colors, setting that to multiply, picking a color that is similar to the background color, in this case it's purple, and then just taking an eraser and putting in the highlights. So then we have the highlights and the shadows. This is going to be a very cel shaded looking anime picture, so keeping a lot of the shadows pretty sharp. Some will be blended though, but just blend very lightly. If you blend too much, you can lose the cel shaded look. You could also try, instead of using a multiply layer, using something like shade or linear burn. A lot of the layer effects do similar things, so one may look better for one drawing than the other. I am doing a bottom down lighting, so the light's coming from the bottom. This gives like a psychotic anime girl look, kind of yonder, creepy, like she kidnapped you or is planning to. Those are my favorite characters to draw. But you can do, if you're unsure of where to place your shadows, I would definitely recommend using references. References are super helpful for this kind of thing. I should have used one, but I didn't. Also, looking into forms. The forms of objects while you're drawing can really help you with placing shadows later. So you've probably seen everyone do like coloring spheres and coloring cylinders and things like that. But it's really helpful to be able to simplify complicated shapes like that, because it's much easier to color a sphere than it is a head, and that can give you the general idea of where everything's going to go. But I would still mostly just use reference, honestly. So cutting in the shadows, still on that multiply layer, just using that one purple color on the multiply. Putting in shadows and highlights. I find it a lot easier to start off really messy and then clean as I go, rather than trying to be really clean straight from the beginning. I just always find it easier to be really messy and then clean it up over time. But you may not, and you can do it either way you want. Either way is fine. It's just whatever you find easiest. Here I'm blending out some parts, some of those harsh lines. But after the shading is done, create a new layer on top. We're going to set to screen, and we're going to pick a color similar to the background color again. So in this case it was like a pink. And changing that to screen and lowering the opacity helps blend all the colors together. Makes everything look more unified. Then in a shine layer on top of all of those layers, we can start adding some more highlights. So I picked a reddish color and very lightly airbrushed it over the highlights. Then picked a bluish color, still on a shine layer, and placed those into the shadows. Then copying your base color, pasting it over top everything, setting it to soft light, or again, you can use hard light, overlay, vivid light, whatever looks best to you. Blurring it out with Gaussian blur and playing around with that opacity helps unify the colors even more and can bring a lot of colors back. You could also play around with the hue and saturation tools. That is another great thing about doing everything on its own separate little layer, is you can just open up the filters, hue, saturation, play around with it, find something you like. I'm adding a bit of blush back on that base layer with the airbrush because it was looking a little too harsh for me. I then added another multiply layer, and I'm starting to add the very, very darkest shadows. I don't do much of this because I am trying to keep that more animated anime feel, and they usually only use like base color and shadow. Adding some extra shading around the eyes. Keeping the second layer of shadow within the first layer of shadow, so I'm not putting it in the highlights. I'm keeping it in the shadows to add more depth to the shadows. Using this very sparingly. Here I am going in and touching up those shadows again. They looked a little too messy for me. I thought I could clean them up a little more and everything would look a little better. So I'm sharpening up some shadows, adding some very small little light details, blending some of it out a little bit, but trying to keep mostly sharp edges to keep that cel shaded look. Also going through at this point and playing around with the hue and saturation tools just to tweak colors a little bit. That is another good thing about keeping it on its separate layers. But the good thing about this too is we didn't have to use too many layers. There was a couple multiply layers, a screen, a shine, and then a soft light mostly. That was most all the layers. And I know if you're first starting digital art, at least when I did, it was very easy to get overwhelmed with the amount of layers being used. But at the same time, it is very convenient to have so many layers to make colors easier to change. So it's kind of this, trying to find this happy medium between getting all the benefits of layers without having so many layers that you can't keep up with all of it. Playing around with some last minute coloring changes. I usually always create a layer on top of everything. Usually call it like an overpaint layer and add little details. But after all those little tweaks are done, the changing of the colors and everything like that, we have the finished drawing. This was fairly quick to draw. It took me like 20 minutes doing this method. It is a little more simplistic than what I would usually do, but I think you can get a really cool result fairly quickly. It does look very cel shaded, which I like. Again, I will post links in the description to the line art if you want to color it. I'll also post a link in the description to the IBIS paint tutorial that I kind of follow for this. The IBIS paint tutorial is it's a lot better than this. It goes into much more detail. It is much clearer, I think. But hopefully, you still got some value out of this. And hopefully, people that said they wanted a commentary video are not too disappointed. Or hopefully at the very least you'll have fun coloring the line art. If you do color it, send me a link. I'd really like to look at it, see what you come up with. If you want more commentary videos in the future, or if you want me to stop talking and go back to playing music, I can do that as well. So hopefully you had fun. I did. And I'll see you later. Bye.